order in the United States Constitution that prevents the power, that inhibits the powers of the governor as the chief executive and the DPS to, again, protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Texas. And that is actually consistent with the law, and the Supreme Court has not held otherwise. So again, I would encourage our state officials, if they're unclear on this, to request from our Attorney General or from outside lawyers if they need to, as a detailed opinion from our Attorney General as to what exactly is the scope of authority and the scope of options available to the governor and to the state legislature in dealing with this problem. Because to our knowledge, that has not been done yet. To me, if I were the chief executive officer of an organization and I were facing a problem, one of my first things that I would do is I would go to our legal department and I would say, all right guys, what can we do? What are the range of our options that we have in front of us? And then we can start talking about which of those options may be feasible and which ones may not be. But the first step is to find out what's an option. Our governor is going on national television making statements that essentially say, you know, Obama's all powerful here and I just can't do anything. I mean, that's the short version of what he's telling us. Now, sadly, unfortunately, that's what Obama's telling everybody. I'm all powerful and I can do anything. So I don't like when my governor, who actually wrote a book, if you guys are aware of this. Let me rephrase that. Somebody wrote a book. The title of it was better, and it had the name Rick Perry on it, so he at least put his name on it. And it was all about how the state of Texas wasn't going to sit around and wait for Washington to solve problems. They were going to take care of things themselves. And it was all about a part of the Constitution called the 10th Amendment. And if you read the 10th Amendment, it's very clear. Those powers that are not reserved to the states, not reserved to the federal government, nor prohibited to the states, are reserved to the states. And if you read the rest of the Constitution, you will find nowhere in there that it provides that the federal government is empowered to handle the immigration and border enforcement by itself. In fact, it's not even empowered really at all. And yet, somehow or other, our governor has bought into this idea that the 10th Amendment doesn't give him any power over immigration. As someone else said, if the governor of Texas would stand up and say, we're going to do what we need to do, and if Obama needs to send the federal marshals, well, here's my address, he'd be the front runner overnight. I mean, maybe he doesn't believe it, but you know, do you have a political ambition? So anyway, thank you very much.
And not only that, it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. We're going to take questions in just a second. I want to round this off by asking all of your questions. Anybody here that doesn't understand why we're here today? When is it going to be enough? You know, that's the question that we're asking each other. When is it going to be enough? Is it going to be enough when every vacant building in every city, community, and 254 counties in Texas is full? Is that when it's going to be enough? Because I will tell you, I have talked to numerous state representatives and senators and people who just won primaries for statewide office. And I have asked this question: has Governor Perry assembled for you the director of HHS, the Department of Public Safety, Colonel McCraw, Education Commissioner Michael Williams, any and everybody else that ought to be around the table when you're trying to deal with a crisis? Has anybody had that meeting? The answer is no. And I submit to you, it is a minimum expectation that somebody in this building or adjacent buildings gets busy sitting around and having a conversation about what we're going to do here. Because I will tell you this, DPS was already understaffed, undermanned, and underpaid. God love them. Before this crisis ever started a few years ago. Those are men and women who put their lives on the line every single day. We were in this building last year and we advocated for their pay raise. And if I had it all do over, I'd do it again. Those are people who every day have no idea if they're going back home or not. These are the same people who can't go home today because they haven't infectious diseases or parasites that they can't take home to their wives and children or husband and children. Is anybody talking about that? See, the fact of the matter is that the surge that everybody is so proud of doesn't cover very much of the border at all, right, Jim? So everybody just on national TV taking credit for some big, I mean, you know, if y'all think we're being too hard on Governor Perry, I'm gonna remind you of something. We were in this very room in October of 2011, Ken Emanuelson, and Katrina, and some of the others, and Ken particularly because he had the job of a stack of letters to Governor Perry. It was more than a yard foot high. Thousands of people signed a letter begging Governor Perry, begging him to do his job. And you know what we heard from those letters? We actually took those letters and we dropped them off at his office. You know what we heard? Nothing. So if you all think we've been too hard on Governor Perry today, I won't make an apology for it. Just one. Okay, it's time for questions.
When you want nothing for the children, I know you guys talked about the National Guard going to the border, but what about the kids that are a part of it? How do you want that to be handled?
We want those children to get the medical care that they need. They need clean clothes, they need to be fed, they need to have some medical care, and then they need to be put back on a mode of transportation and delivered back to their country of origin. And they can come back, whatever, they can come back the legal way. Because here, let me put a fine point on it. Because if we don't do that, how do we know that the Congo won't decide they want to send theirs, or Syria? Well,
Honduras has said they
Yes.
want their children back.
So we're just saying that we have a capacity here, and we're rapidly approaching that, I think, and maybe have even passed it. Some other questions for the panel?
For Ken, I had a question about what you were talking about with the DPS.
Yes.
What is DPS not doing now that you would like to see them do? You're talking about what they have the authority to do.
That's a very good question, and the range of options that the DPS has is a question that really is best addressed by our Attorney General, as I said. And I know that they're doing some of the things that they need to be doing, but there are a range of things they could be doing that they've not, to my knowledge, they've not looked into, and I believe that they need to have a very good understanding of whether, for example, can DPS send someone back across the border, and in what cases? Are they fully up to speed on when they can and when they can't? I don't think they are. And so I think that our own DPS probably is taking people into custody, which they may not legally have to. There seems to be an assumption that that our DPS needs to essentially be taking all their cues from the border patrol and from ICE, which means taking their cues from Obama. And I don't know that that's necessary. That's a question really for our Attorney General to address. And if he has addressed it, we would very much appreciate it if he would make that guidance public, so that we would all know whether they are actually taking an aggressive stance on this.
The Supreme Court has addressed it, and they said that is the purview of the federal government, deportation specifically. The states can't deport people.
Well,
is it your suggestion that the state should just do it anyway, I guess kind of see what happens?
Well, as I understand, actually, that the specific fact pattern that's presented by this border crisis right now has not been before the Supreme Court. What we had in Arizona was a particular statute in Arizona. Now, under this federal law that's in place, there's a law called IRCA, IRCA, which was passed in 1986. And that law provides that that essentially Congress has said that because we say so, we're going to state that the federal government has plenary power over immigration. That actually is a wrong position, and I don't believe that question was presented in the Supreme Court case. The question of whether Congress can dictate for itself that it has all power over immigration. If you read the Constitution, which is something I don't think far too few of our judges do these days, But if you actually do that, you'll find that there's no source in the Constitution for that level of plenary power. And in fact, the 10th Amendment directly contradicts that idea. So IRCA is not constitutional to that effect, and I don't believe that question was ruled in the U.S. v. Arizona case as the idea that IRCA was directly constitutional.
So it's the recommendation that Texas just do it, just start deporting people and then see what happens?
I think Texas should.
Is that the recommendation you're making?
Texas should take the actions that they decide is best for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Texas. And if that means they need to deport people and they need to create a conflict with Obama, they are liable to get sued by Eric Holder. And if our governor is afraid of getting sued by Eric Holder, then he has no reason to be running for president.
That's right.
What about, what about immigration reform? You guys passed a bill that we look at that hasn't been passed. Other Republican groups have actually asked that, encourage Congress to pass the bill. Are you guys?
Are you speaking about the gang rape bill?
Yes.
Well, yes, there are some groups, and this goes back to what was said earlier. There is a cheap labor lobby that works very hard to pass bills like that will expand the range of cheap labor, unskilled cheap labor in this country to keep wages low. It's very easy to see. Just look at who's behind it and who's putting their money behind it. They're doing it to keep wages low in this country. Yes, so yeah, and a lot of them are Republicans.
So you're not for that bill? Now?
For the gang rape bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, the gang rape bill would have done absolutely almost nothing to address the problem of border. That we seem to hear from these people that, oh, well, we need this points up the need for immigration reform. Well, perhaps the right kind of immigration reform, but sending up the amnesty-shaped beacon is exactly how we got here today. So if you tell people, get here, if you can stand on American soil, you're free and clear, what kind of incentive does that set up? I mean, that's obvious. The incentive is, get across the border, stand on U.S. soil, you'll get amnesty. I mean, who doesn't come here under those circumstances? Everybody would. I mean, it would be a no-brainer to come to the U.S., get your feet on U.S. soil, hold your time until you get your amnesty.
Is there an alternative that you guys are trying to get passed in terms of immigration reform? Or is it-
Border security is our message.
We have good current laws. They simply have to be upheld.
We have laws in place today, and we have a border that's not being secured. And until we have a border that is secured, any more talk of giving people, essentially wiping the slate clean, does nothing but just encourage more people to come to this country. So until you secure the border, it makes even no sense to talk about that. And if there's ever been an illustration of that, we see it right now. Because what's been happening in the news for the last couple of years, we've been talking about amnesty, and they've been selling this message. Amnesty's about to happen. It's going to happen. It's coming very soon. And what do we see happen? We see an influx of immigration from these other countries. So people are trying to get to U.S. soil, so they'll be standing on U.S. soil when an amnesty is put into place. This is such common sense. I mean, it's obvious. So until we have a secure border that we have control of, any even talk about legalization or amnesty is only puts more pressure on that border and only overburdens our public services more.
So just to be clear, no other immigration reform, just enforce the laws that we already have is what you're saying?
Well, I say more laws than the ones we have aren't being enforced already.
Well, I mean, no, I'm not saying don't put more laws in place. I mean, I think that we should be, for example, I think the state of Texas should not be doing business with companies that can't prove that they're not hiring illegal workers. That's a law I would support. I think we should have a law against sanctuary policies at the state police and at the local governments. Those are new laws that I think we should put in place. I think we should have licensing rules for people where they have to verify that they are hiring legal workers. Those are all new laws, but no, we don't need to be talking about any legalization because it's counterproductive at this point until we have a secure border.
What about Austin as a sanctuary city? Are you against Austin being a sanctuary city?
Yes. We need to have policies in place that free the hands of law enforcement. Right now, we've shackled our law enforcement. They're not allowed to deal with issues where they may have a concern about immigration status. They're not allowed to investigate that. And that's at the state level also. In our state police, under Rick Perry, we have the same policy, so for him to talk about the cities, he's being hypocritical, because our state police, unless it's been a very recent change, our state police has the same policy. They do not, the officers are prohibited to look into the immigration status.
You've all kind of called for Rick Perry to call a special session. What do you hope to accomplish during a special session?
Well, first of all, see, we believe under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution that Governor Perry and/or Attorney General Greg Abbott have the authority to declare a state of imminent danger in the state of Texas, and they can specify that. If they are not willing to do that, Attorney General Abbott can actually request a declaratory judgment from a court specifying the imminent danger and agreeing that we are in such a state.
And that's required to send the National Guard? Is that why?
Well, you have to declare, not necessarily, but if they're looking for the federal government an excuse for the federal government to come down here and they're not coming, we're simply saying that they already have the authority to take care of it themselves by sending the National Guard, by, let me just say this, hiring more DPS officers, because DPS was understaffed, as I said before, this started. And it also includes that they could invoke the state constitution, what is defined in our state constitution as the Texas military. And that gets into the weeds, trust me. So that is specified, and so they can make that determination. Now, as far as the funding goes, if we're going to go into the rainy day fund, they're going to have to ask the legislature, okay? But there's some funding that is available that the Legislative Budget Board, and we can discuss who they are if you don't want to, but the Legislative Budget Board is actually supposed to have a meeting in August. And that's an opportunity, because see, right now, DPS is using out of their existing budget. And what we don't want to see is we don't want to see DPS as an agency harmed and driver's license stations closed down all because we're doing this surge. See, because the surge really needs to be broadened and supported by the National Guard, and DPS needs to have the funds they need to do it. And some of my colleagues up here said today that we got funds. I mean, if you want to go into talking about the things we could stop doing in Texas in order to fund the security of people in Texas, I mean, we can go there. I mean, let me just go ahead and send one over the bow. The Arts Commission. Subsidies for Hollywood. Formula One racing and all the big business companies that get all of these handouts through the Enterprise Fund and the Emerging Technology Fund. We need to end that. We need to end that period, and we're going to work on that next session. But I mean, those are pockets of money, buckets of money that you can get right now. So don't tell the people of Texas when we've got all the oil and gas money pouring in here. And by the way, in some of these rooms around this building, they are just, they can't wait to get into session to start talking about what they're going to spend that money on. We are saying that the safety and security of the people of Texas comes first.
Yeah.
And it's what they're
To specifically answer your question about what we can accomplish in a special session, we've included some demands in the resolution that we passed for League City to protect the health, safety, and security of our citizens, and I'd like to read them to you so that you have on the record exactly what we would like to see our state legislature do. We demand that the Texas State Legislature enhance state smuggling and human trafficking laws and provide civil liability protections for Texan landowners against criminal trespassers. We demand that the Texas State Legislature abolish any and all state-controlled or sponsored magnets that exacerbate the problem of rampant illegal immigration, such as, but not limited to, in-state tuition subsidies, welfare benefits, and free non-emergency health care for illegal aliens. We require the state to perform a cost-benefit analysis of the illegal alien presence and report that cost to Texas taxpayers and state agencies. And finally, we demand that they pass legislation to prohibit sanctuary cities which restrict law enforcement from determining the immigration status of detainees after the commission of a crime within our communities. That's a start.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify something about the rainy day fund. Many times that you'll hear, we've got to use the rainy day fund for education. Well, let me tell you something. This Friday, there's a meeting of the State Board of Education. And if you look at what is on the agenda and what is not on the agenda, what is on the agenda is to look at a Mexican American Studies curriculum and purchasing products, instructional materials for that curriculum and for school districts to do that. What is not on the agenda is a resolution that wanted to be put forth by State Board of Education Ken Mercer to look at the AP U.S. history framework and exams that our State Board of Education and our state is spending money for our teachers to go and be trained on their professional development on this curriculum. This curriculum, that quote that you read by Frederick Douglass is not in that framework. Our children won't be learning the U.S. history, and that's for the AP, 46,000 students. So we're spending money unwisely, and nobody is showing up at those meetings to question that. So don't let them use the narrative that we've got to use that rainy day funds for education, when education is exacerbating the problem because we're desensitizing, we're putting curriculum out that's desensitizing our children to the national security threat that we face here in the state of Texas.
Let's get the questions from the media that have any more questions. Anybody got any more questions? Any more questions? Okay, Brady, come on. And we're gonna wrap it up.
No, I've just got one little short statement to sum this thing up for the news media. From the state representative to the governor, the first responsibility of an elected official in the state of Texas is to protect Texas. That's exactly what, when you take the oath of the state of Texas, the state constitution, the United States Constitution, you take the oath to protect Texas. And that's what every representative that we have here, the state reps, the state senators, the governor, the lieutenant governor, everybody else, protect Texas. That's where we're going here. We have a health, safety, we have a criminal problem coming across our border. Not just from Mexico, but from all in South America and in Central America. Not only there, but the Middle East. We did a cartoon last week. And it showed a kind of a terrorist-looking guy stepping across the Rio Grande. Stepping across the Rio Grande, and the caption was, Governor Perry, which way to the Houston Ship Channel? And he's got bombs strapped all over. Now think about that, that's a real thing. And I've talked to several state representatives. Bob Hall just got back from the border. Their number one concern right now that they're thinking about every day and every night is when is a terrorist attack going to happen in Texas. This is serious, people, and we've got to put a stop to it. And the way we stop it now, the best way is a special session. And we already went through why. So think about that. This is important.
Okay, thanks everybody for being here.